Women are not married to the same man. You're not a sister wife anymore.
When Robyn Sullivan Brown joined the Brown family in 2010, it was supposed to be a new beginning. To Kody, she was a breath of fresh air, young, energetic, spiritual, and deeply committed to the idea of plural marriage. To the audience, she seemed like the missing piece that would bring harmony to an already complicated household. But inside the family, her arrival marked the start of something that would slowly divide everything they had built. By the time Robyn entered, Kody's relationships with his other wives, Mary, Janelle, and Christine, were already fragile. Years of stress, jealousy, and exhaustion had taken their toll until each wife found her place within the family's rhythm, for better or worse. Then there was Robyn, polite, emotional, and open about her deep faith. She wanted plural marriage, wholeheartedly, and wasn't joining to test it. She was coming to live it. At first, she was quite genuine. She looked up to Mary, admired Janelle's strength, and appreciated Christine being a good mother. But it didn't take long for the balance to shift. Kody was immediately smitten. He described their connection as spiritual, natural, and different. The other wives saw it too. The way he looked at her, the extra time he spent with her, the way he laughed differently in her presence. For them, it wasn't jealousy so much as recognition. This was no longer the same man they married. He was falling in love again, and it was changing the entire family dynamic. Robyn's tears started early. They weren't manipulative then. They were real. She cried because she wanted everybody to love each other. She cried because she felt guilty when she was happy and others were hurting. She cried because, in her mind, her faith told her that plural marriage was supposed to make everyone stronger, not destroy them. But good intentions couldn't fix what her presence unintentionally broke. Mary, once Kody's closest confidant, began to slide into emotional exile. She felt like she was reliving a heartbreak, over and over again, as her husband's affection went out to Robyn. Mary had been the one to encourage Kody to court Robyn in the first place, thinking it was God's will. But when that decision began to unravel her own security, she didn't know how to handle it. Janelle is pragmatic and composed, and thus doesn't outwardly show her pain, but she noticed the imbalance too. She noticed how Kody's visits changed, how his energy shifted, how the family's conversations start to center on Robyn's feelings. And then there was Christine, loyal, kind, and always trying to hold the family together. Christine's relationship with Robyn began optimistically. She wanted to believe they could be close, but with time, she felt invisible, replaced by a newer, softer version of what Kody wanted. Robyn's entry didn't add just another wife, but rewrote the emotional script of the whole marriage. Still, Robyn didn't set out to be the favorite. She would say, time and again, how she wanted the wives to love each other, to live as true sisters. She prayed about it constantly. But prayer doesn't erase perception. The more she cried, the more others rolled their eyes. To them, her tears felt like a tool, something that drew Kody's protection, his attention, and his sympathy. Behind the scenes, those tears meant something else entirely. The years before joining the Browns had been spent in a marriage that had left Robyn wounded. She was divorced, raising children, and looking for something stable. When she met Kody, he represented safety and faith, a man who could give her a family rooted in divine purpose. She did not just marry a husband. She married into a belief system that promised eternal unity. That's what made her so determined to make it work. Soon, however, she realized that she hadn't joined a united family. She had stepped right into an emotional battlefield that had been brewing for decades. As the cameras rolled, the public saw only pieces of what was happening. On screen, Robyn appeared emotional, often in tears, over misunderstandings or tensions between the wives. Off-screen, those tears came from a deeper conflict, the struggle between what she believed marriage was supposed to be and what it actually was. Kody's growing devotion to her didn't help. He grew fiercely protective of her, sometimes harshly so against the other wives. He called out their jealousy, questioned their loyalty, and used Robyn's sensitivity as proof that she understood him better. A partnership between equals began to feel like a two-person bond with everyone else on the outside. The more he protected her, the more isolated Robyn became. She was caught between gratitude and guilt. Gratitude for being loved so much, and guilt for being loved at the expense of others. Every time she saw Christine's sadness or Janelle's frustration, it tore at her. She cried because she didn't know how to fix it. But the tears also became part of the problem. The other wives couldn't separate Robyn's sincerity from the consequences of her emotions. To them, her crying wasn't just empathy, it was influence. Every time Robyn broke down, Kody would rush to her defense, and another layer of resentment would form. In interviews, Robyn would often say she just wanted to be accepted. She said, "I didn't come here to take anyone's place. I came here because I believed in this family." And for a while, she did believe. She believed they could overcome jealousy. She believed love could multiply. But faith, as she would learn, doesn't thrive in imbalance. The cracks that were there before she came had deepened after she did come. And while that wasn't her fault, she became the face of the problem, the visible symbol of everything that had gone wrong. By the time Christine had begun to voice her unhappiness openly, tears from Robyn had almost become a given. She was crying for a family that no longer existed, for unity that could never be repaired, for the love which today felt like a burden. Publicly, she was the one who was emotional, the peacemaker, the idealist. She wanted everyone to get along. As a matter of fact, behind the scenes, this woman was exhausted. The more she tried to hold the family together, the more it slipped away. When Christine left, Robyn's tears grew heavier. She cried not just for loss, but for guilt, having prayed for sisterhood yet standing alone at the end. She didn't know it yet, but she was becoming what nobody in plural marriage ever wants to be, the last wife standing. When Robyn married Kody Brown, she felt she joined something strong. In her mind, she pictured late-night talks, shared prayers, laughter echoing down hallways full of children, and 4 women bound by faith and love. For a while, that dream seemed real, at least on the surface. But beneath, resentment was spreading quietly, like cracks beneath the floor. It started with little things. Kody spending more time at Robyn's house than at the others, staying late talking and laughing, and sometimes not coming home until morning. The other wives noticed. They didn't need to ask questions. The answers were pretty obvious. Mary felt replaced, Christine felt dismissed, and Janelle felt disconnected. But Robyn was divided. She did not want Kody to slight anyone, yet neither did she want to apologize for their bond. In her mind, she was not taking anything away. She was only receiving love which, to her, all the wives deserved. Yet love in plural marriage was never that simple. The balance started to crumble long before anybody said it out loud. But behind the scenes, the wives began to withdraw from each other. The shared dinners became less frequent. The laughter was gone. When they actually did get together, the air was thick with silence. Every action felt scrutinized. Every word was said with hidden meaning. For the first time, Robyn began to understand how fragile plural marriage really was. It wasn't the spiritual harmony she had imagined. It was emotional negotiation, every day, every hour. She tried anyway. She organized family nights, sent supportive messages, and reminded everyone constantly that love was the key. But her optimism proved annoying rather than comforting. To the rest, it sounded naive or worse, performative. Then came the pandemic. COVID-19 hit the family like a wave crashing into an already weakened structure. Kody, terrified of getting sick and losing control, laid down strict rules. No unnecessary travel. No visiting other homes. No bending the guidelines. To him, it was about safety. To the wives, it was about power. Robyn agreed with his rules. She followed them precisely. She was protecting her husband and their children, as far as her mind was concerned. In effect, she felt she was being obedient to faith and reason. But that obedience came with a price. Christine and Janelle were of the view that that very agreement of Robyn was a license for Kody to be in isolation to hide behind her compliance to avoid the rest of the family. They felt he was being partial and accused him of using COVID as an excuse to spend more time with Robyn. And perhaps, in some way, he did. For months, Kody spent most of his time at Robyn's house. He said it was practical. Her home was the most compliant with his safety rules. But to the others, it looked like betrayal. The tears returned with a vengeance for Robyn. Every time Kody would leave her house, she would cry. Not because she was happy he stayed, but because she hated being the reason he didn't go elsewhere. "They think I'm stealing him," she said once, "but I didn't ask for this." Her children became aware of the tension too. They saw their mother crying more, praying longer, and withdrawing into herself. Suspicion had replaced the unity that once defined the Browns. Kody, meanwhile, grew defensive. He accused the wives of being disloyal, of undermining his authority, of not taking the pandemic seriously. He called their independence rebellion. And when they pushed back, he ran to the only person who supported him, Robyn. That dynamic created a storm nobody could stop. Robyn became his safe space, the one who listened, the one who agreed, the one who comforted him when everyone else was angry. But being that person came with guilt. Every time she defended him, she alienated herself further from the others. Christine, once her staunchest ally, began to pull away altogether. The laughter and sisterhood they shared were long gone. Christine didn't trust Robyn anymore, not through any maliciousness, just because everything she did seemed to favor Kody. Privately, Robyn prayed for understanding. She wanted Christine to see her heart, to know that she wasn't trying to be the favorite. But Christine was tired of feeling unseen. To her, Robyn's tears no longer meant empathy. They meant avoidance. It all came to a head during one of those family discussions on holidays. Kody had made it very clear that only those who were in adherence with his rules could get together. Janelle and Christine disagreed. They said their children should be allowed to visit freely without strict testing or isolation. Robyn was again on Kody's side. Her voice shook as she explained why. She was afraid of losing him to sickness, she said. She wanted to do the right thing. But all anyone else heard was compliance, the same pattern repeating. That night in the aftermath of the meeting, Robyn completely broke down. Cameras captured it partially, her face buried in her hands, her voice cracking as she said, "I just wanted everyone to be safe." But what they didn't show was what came after. The silence. The isolation. The guilt that followed when she realized she had become the symbol of everything the other wives resented. Kody, tired and resentful, became increasingly cold to the rest of the family. He started using words such as disloyal and unfaithful, not in a romantic sense, but spiritual. He said they weren't respecting his role as husband. Robyn, sitting beside him, would nod gently, but her eyes would fill with tears. She was trapped. She either disagreed with him, thus losing his trust, or she agreed and lost everybody else's. That's the paradox of Robyn Brown, the woman who wanted peace but became a symbol of division. As the months dragged on, her tears almost became routine. She cried in interviews, in conversation, in silence. She cried for the family she wanted, for the man she loved, and for the guilt she couldn't escape. But behind the scenes, even production members recognized the shift had taken place. They said Robyn seemed tired, not dramatic, not manipulative, just emotionally drained. Her faith in the family was breaking, and she couldn't stop it. Janelle started talking candidly about independence. Christine packed emotional distance into every interaction. Mary, long accustomed to loneliness, accepted quietly that nothing would ever be the same. And Robyn? She stayed, not because she was winning, but because she could never imagine leaving. Her faith told her to endure, her love to hope, her guilt that she was part of the reason it was falling apart. The storm inside the family wasn't about who loved Kody more, but rather about who could survive the loneliness that came with loving him at all. When Christine finally made her decision to leave, Robyn's tears turned from guilt to fear, because deep down, she knew what was coming next. She was about to watch the family she had prayed for disintegrate, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The breaking point didn't come with shouting or violence. It came with silence, the sort of silence that hums with all that has been left unsaid. Christine had already made her mind up. She had fought for years to feel wanted, seen, chosen, but that fight had become exhausting. When Kody told her he no longer wanted an intimate marriage, something inside her finally stopped trying. She realized she couldn't keep living as a shadow in her own home. When Christine told Kody it was over, he didn't believe her. Not really. He assumed it was just another argument, just another storm that would pass. But this time she wasn't angry. She was calm. She was done. That calmness terrified him more than any fight ever had. It was like watching a house burn from the inside for Robyn. She could feel the destruction coming but couldn't stop it. She loved them both, husband and sister-wife, and was caught in the middle of something that had no solution. It wasn't until Christine started removing Kody's belongings from her house that the reality finally set in. Boxes labeled Kody's clothes, bathroom stuff, books. Each one was a quiet declaration that she was done waiting. Robyn saw the footage later and wept. She said, "I didn't know she was serious. I thought she just needed space. But Christine didn't need space, she needed freedom." The tears Robyn shed in those episodes were not for sadness alone. They were about helplessness. She cried because she understood that Christine wasn't just leaving Kody. She was leaving the whole idea of what they had all been brought together to believe in. For years, Robyn had prayed for harmony, for healing, for sisterhood. Now all those prayers felt unanswered. When Kody realized that Christine was truly leaving, his emotions twisted into anger. He said she was betraying the family, that she was breaking her covenant. To him, leaving wasn't just a personal decision, it was spiritual rebellion. For Christine, it was salvation. Robyn was standing off to the side of that confrontation, tears in her eyes, trying to be the peacemaker. She told Christine she loved her, that she wanted her to stay, that they could work it out. Christine thanked her, but her answer was firm. "I can't do this anymore. I deserve love." Those words echoed through the family. For Robyn, they were devastating. She had built her faith on the belief that love was supposed to be patient, sacrificial, enduring. To hear Christine say she deserved more felt like hearing someone renounce the gospel she lived by. But deep inside, Robyn comprehended as well. She admired Christine's bravery. As the news spread to the other wives, the family completely fractured. Janelle supported Christine, quietly but firmly. Mary, though sympathetic, stayed distant. She had her own battles with Kody's indifference. And Kody, wounded and defensive, started turning all his frustration toward Robyn. He started spending more time in her house, not as a husband seeking comfort, but as a man seeking control. He would rant about loyalty, about betrayal, about how no one respected him anymore, for hours on end. Robyn listened, nodding through her tears, trying to remind him to stay calm. But every word she spoke seemed to bounce off his anger. Privately, she felt stifled. The man she had once admired, the man who had been so full of faith and energy, was now bitter and hard, his sense of authority curdled into resentment. He wasn't leading anymore. He was lashing out. Anger wouldn't fix anything, Robyn told him. He told her she didn't understand. And maybe she didn't. Because Robyn had never experienced the kind of emotional rejection that Christine and Mary had lived through. She had always been Kody's safe place, the one he turned to when the others challenged him. But now, even that safety was starting to feel like a prison. Christine's departure hit Robyn harder than anyone had anticipated. She cried in nearly every interview. Viewers rolled their eyes, thinking it was for the cameras, but behind the scenes, she was unraveling. The guilt was overwhelming. She felt like she was the reason Christine left. She felt like, had she done more, cried less, interfered differently, maybe the family could have survived. But it was never about her. The truth was, Christine's decision had been coming for years. Robyn just happened to be the final piece that made her realize it was okay to walk away. But after Christine had left, Kody spiraled. He said he didn't know if he could trust anyone anymore. He blamed Christine for destroying the family's legacy. But what he didn't admit was that the legacy had been breaking long before she packed a single box. Robyn tried to patch things up. She reached out to Janelle, tried to comfort Mary, tried to keep Kody grounded. But nothing worked. Every conversation became another argument. Every attempt at peace ended in exhaustion. The emotional weight turned unbearable. One night on location, Robyn completely broke down. Her mascara streaked down her cheeks as she sobbed. I just wanted a big, happy family. I don't understand why everyone's giving up. It was raw, messy, human, but it was also too late. For by that time, the others had already stopped believing in the dream to which she was still holding on. To them, those tears were just another reminder of what they had lost. Not because of Robyn herself, but because she represented the man who wouldn't change. Kody saw himself as the victim, but to his wives, he was the architect of the pain. Robyn's house fell silent. She stopped visiting as much, and she pulled away from group activities. Every time she turned her phone on, she saw fans accusing her of manipulation or of playing favorites or of being the reason that this family had imploded. None of it was true, but in some ways it didn't matter. The public perception had been sealed. Robyn was the wife who got what she wanted and destroyed everything in the process. She didn't see herself like that at all. She saw herself as someone who tried to love too much, to fix too much, to believe too long. But that's the cruel irony of the story. In trying to hold everyone together, Robyn became the symbol of why they fell apart. By the end of that year, the Brown family was no longer one unit. Christine moved to Utah, Janelle was emotionally independent, Mary was detached, and Kody was full-time with Robyn, the last wife standing. The woman who once dreamed of sisterhood now lived in silence, surrounded by the echoes of a faith that had failed her. And every tear she cried after that wasn't for pity or forgiveness. It was for mourning a family that had already died before anyone admitted it. After Christine was gone, the silence between the Browns was louder than any fight that had gone before. For more than 20 years, they'd formed their lives out of a sense of togetherness, a plural marriage based on faith, anchored by love. But when one pillar fell, the whole structure began to shake. She found herself standing in the middle of the wreckage. To the world, she had won. Kody was living almost entirely with her now. There were no more schedules, no more shared rotations, no more waiting for her turn. She had the husband all to herself, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like isolation. The words would catch in her throat, and her eyes in those interviews would well up with tears as she'd say, I didn't want this. And for once, even her critics could see the truth in her face. She had dreamed of being part of a big, united family, a sisterhood that prayed together, raised children together, and supported each other through every trial. What she ended up with was a man consumed by bitterness and loneliness. He was no longer the confident, charming leader who had held his family together through faith. Kody had become rigid, defensive, and angry. He saw betrayal everywhere, in Christine's laughter, in Janelle's independence, in Mary's detachment. He carried that resentment home to Robyn. She tried to soothe him. She told him to pray, to focus on the good, to let go of his anger. But her words, once comforting, now felt like noise to him. He didn't want comfort. He wanted control. He blamed everyone else for the collapse, except himself. And gradually, the man who once made Robyn feel so special started to drain her spirit too. Behind the scenes, the crew noticed it first. Robyn's eyes looked heavier, her posture smaller. She smiled less. Her tears, once frequent but soft, became quieter, like she was crying from exhaustion rather than emotion. She'd say to the cameras, I miss my family, and she meant it. She missed the noise of the kids running through the hallways, the sound of shared laughter, the simple chaos that once made their plural home feel alive. Now, her house was too clean, too quiet, too still. Kody talked for hours about betrayal and faith and loyalty, going in circles around the same subjects like a man lost in his own storm. He said things like, they've all turned their backs on me, and they don't respect me anymore. She listened because it was her duty. That was what she had signed up for, to stand by her husband, to be his peace. But she couldn't deny this one truth. With each passing day, her peace turned to pain. She was living with the shell of a man she once adored. When Janelle finally broke up with Kody, it was like another earthquake. Robyn had hoped that once Christine left, the others would hold more tightly onto what was left. Rather, they seemed to drift further apart, she said. Each woman had tasted just enough of freedom, and once you feel that sort of peace, it's impossible to go back. Kody couldn't understand it. He called it disloyalty. Robyn called it heartbreak. In her confessionals, she'd repeatedly say she wanted to heal the family. But healing requires participation, and nobody was going to willingly go back into a system that had failed them so thoroughly. Christine was flourishing in Utah. Janelle was finding herself as an independent woman. Mary quietly rebuilt her life. Robyn, however, was stuck in place, holding on to a man who was angry at everyone except her. To outsiders, her tears became predictable. They rolled their eyes, naming her manipulative or dramatic. But for the onlooker who dared to look closer, they were not crocodile tears. They were tears of mourning. She was mourning something nobody else seemed to want anymore: the dream of unity. Often at night, after the filming had wrapped up, Robyn sat in the quiet of her home while Kody paced or ranted in another room. She said the same prayer she had been repeating since she joined the family. "Please, God, bring us back together." But the answer never came. Instead, she began to realize that perhaps God's answer was silence, a reminder that some things aren't meant to be fixed. The public's reaction didn't help. Online, Robyn became the villain. Fans called her the favorite wife, the manipulator, the reason everyone left. Every episode she cried, social media lit up in anger and mockery. They said she was faking it, that she got what she wanted and still wasn't satisfied. But Robyn wasn't celebrating. She was shrinking. She has said in one interview, "I wanted sister wives. I didn't want to be the only one." The ache of those words was from a place where only someone who has lost everything can understand. Having Kody to herself also meant having all his pain to herself. He did not have other wives sharing his burdens and balancing his moods. All his frustration, all his guilt, all his loneliness, it landed on Robyn's shoulders. The man who once shared his love now only shared his anger. It wasn't long before Robyn's kids started to feel it too. They'd ask her why Daddy was always so sad, why the siblings never came over anymore, why the big family gatherings had stopped. She didn't know how to explain that the dream they had all built their lives around had quietly died. As the seasons went on, the show itself changed. What was once a story about faith and family became a slow unraveling of heartbreak and human frailty. Robyn was no longer just a character on TV. She was a symbol. To some, she represented the failure of plural marriage. To others, she was a woman trapped by her own ideals. She tried holding on to her faith, saying that everything happens for a reason. But she couldn't ignore how small her world had become. From a household full of laughter and chaos, to a quiet house with one man and too many regrets. It wasn't the life she prayed for. And yet she stayed. She stayed because she believed in commitment. She stayed because she couldn't bear to walk away from someone who so clearly needed her. She stayed because part of her still hoped that somehow, someday, the family might find a way back to love. But every time she looked into Kody's eyes and saw the bitterness there, she felt that hope slipping further away. It wasn't explosive. It was the silent, slow, suffocating aftermath of the family's collapse, much like endless grief. And through it all, Robyn kept crying. Not for sympathy, not for the cameras, but because she was the last one left to feel everything the others had already let go of. She wasn't just the last wife standing. She was the last believer in a dream that no longer existed. Long before she was the most talked about woman on Sister Wives, Robyn Sullivan lived a very different life. She was a young mother, divorced, and working hard to provide for her children. Her first marriage had left her bruised, not just emotionally, but spiritually. When she came into plural marriage, she wasn't chasing fame or wealth. She was chasing redemption. In her heart, she felt that this was a calling commissioned by a power greater than herself, to heal, to grow, to raise her children in a community of faith and love. When she met Kody, he felt like a second chance. His energy, his devotion to God, and the big dreams he had for a united family instantly drew her in. For the first time, she truly felt seen, valued, and protected. But what Robyn couldn't have known was that the family she was joining was already cracking beneath the surface. The wives she admired, Mary, Janelle, and Christine, were strong in their own ways but weary. Decades of emotional strain and unspoken pain had created quiet rivalries and invisible walls. Robyn entered that world with hope and open arms, but the others saw her as a disruption, a new variable in a system already struggling to stay balanced. Nevertheless, Robyn made an effort to bridge the divides. She baked for them, prayed together with them, sent heartfelt messages, and insisted on family unity. However, love cannot thrive when trust is gone, and little by little she realized that she was fighting a losing battle. What started out as tears of sympathy for all the others slowly became the only expression she knew to let go of the ache that came with trying to hold everyone together. But over the years, people called those tears fake, a tool, a strategy, a performance. But the truth behind them was so much more human. They were born of guilt, loneliness, and confusion. Guilt that she had Kody's affection and the others didn't. Loneliness of being misunderstood and blamed. Confusion about how faith, meant to bind them together, had become their cage. Behind closed doors, Robyn's life wasn't as enviable as it seemed. The bond she shared with Kody was real, but it came with a price: responsibility. With each wife drifting away from him, Kody's emotional weight fell squarely on her shoulders. He needed someone to talk with, someone to absorb his anger, his grief, his frustration. That person was always Robyn. She wanted to be his comfort, but she became his mirror, reflecting all the pain he refused to face. At times, she wondered whether faith had led her astray. She had been taught that plural marriage was sacrosanct, a higher calling to bring souls closer to God. What she saw now was suffering, division, and resentment. Was this God's plan, or had they mistaken pain for purpose? Privately, Robyn had begun to wonder. Why had God brought her here? Why had he let her family fall apart? She was praying for understanding, for peace, for forgiveness. Not so much for them, but for herself, because deep down she blamed herself for everything. She replayed every decision, every tear, every argument, every moment she tried to mediate and failed. And with each replay she asked the same question: could I have done more? But some things were never hers to fix. Christine's leaving wasn't caused by Robyn. Janelle's independence wasn't inspired by jealousy. Mary's loneliness didn't start when Robyn showed up. Those were old wounds. Robyn just stepped into a storm that was already raging. She tried to hold her umbrella against the wind, and when it blew away, everyone blamed her for the rain. Still, Robyn stayed, not because she was blind, but because, to her, leaving would be the ultimate betrayal. Her sense of duty ran deeper than her exhaustion. She had chosen Kody for eternity, and even when eternity began to feel unbearable, she couldn't let go. Her tears now constituted the language of Robyn. They spoke on her behalf when words could not come forth. In them, every broken dream, every prayer that had gone unanswered, and every unheard apology was buried. They were what remained of a love turned into survival. The woman behind those tears wasn't a manipulator. She was a believer, one who held on to faith long after it stopped holding her. In later interviews, when asked what she wanted now that the family had fallen apart, Robyn did not talk about fame, money, or even marriage. She said, "I just want peace. I just want us to love each other again." That simple statement said it all. It wasn't about control. It was about loss. She missed the idea of family, not the hierarchy, not the shared husband, but the laughter, the warmth, the shared purpose that once gave her a feeling of security. And though she still had Kody, she had lost the rest of her world. For Kody it was anger. For Robyn it was grief. She grieved a sisterhood that never fully accepted her, children who no longer saw one another often, a faith community that once gave her purpose, but now did little more than remind her of what was gone. In the quiet moments when the cameras were off and the lights dimmed, Robyn sat alone and wept, not for sympathy but for release. It was the only thing she could do that felt real anymore. People often wonder why she stayed. Simple answer: Robyn loved too deeply to walk away. She believed love could still heal what was broken. But some loves aren't meant to be repaired. Some are meant to teach, and that's what her tears were, lessons. Lessons of devotion, lessons of guilt, lessons of the price one pays for believing love is endurance. Today, Robyn lives in a world far quieter than the one she envisioned. There are no shared dinners, no sister wives, no family unity, just her and Kody, and the echo of everything they lost. But perhaps that's where her true story begins. For behind every tear was not weakness, but truth. Behind every sob was not manipulation, but longing. And behind every heartbreak was a woman who still believed even when belief became the heaviest burden of all. Robyn's tears were not about power or pity. They were about love, the kind that hurts, heals, and humbles. And maybe that's what makes her story both tragic and beautiful. She never stopped hoping, even when hope was the only thing left.